You are listening to Lighthearted, the official podcast of the United States Lighthouse Society. My name is Jeremy D'Entremont. Welcome. Today is June 12th, 2024, and this is the fourth installment of Lighthearted Light. That's L-I-T-E. In Lighthearted Light, we bring you edited interviews chosen from the 5 years and 300 episodes of Lighthearted. Today's installment features highlights from an interview that was originally recorded in March 2019. Matt Rosenberg is a high school English teacher and also the seasonal caretaker and modern-day keeper of the famous Cape Nettic light station in York, Maine, better known as the Nubble Light. The light station is owned by the town of York and is managed by the town's Parks and Recreation Department. Around 500,000 people each year come to Sawyer Park in York to view the picturesque lighthouse across a narrow channel of water. Matt is among the privileged few people who actually get onto the island, where he is in charge of maintenance and cleanup from spring through fall. Let's listen to some highlights from my conversation with Matt Rosenberg now. Essentially, you're the modern-day keeper, although the Coast Guard still takes care of the active light and fog signal. What's the best thing about the job?
I think the best thing about being the keeper or caretaker at the Nubble Light is the people I actually get to meet. You know, I spend my time both at Nubble Light and in the park. And while I love the time that I spend at the lighthouse, you know, it's fantastic. I get to be out there on my own, and I'm kind of in charge of just about everything except the light. I really enjoy my time in the park, where I get to meet people from all over the world. You know, there are so many interesting people out there, and people love the Nubble so much. They're super enthusiastic. So any part of my day that I spend interacting with the public, that's really usually the highlight of my day.
What's the worst thing about the job?
The worst thing, well, I have two things that are probably the worst thing. The first is kind of picky, but because I take care of the park as well, I would say the litter. You know, we get 500,000 visitors a year, and a lot of our visitors are super conscientious, and other ones aren't. And so the litter kind of over time will get on my nerves a little bit. And then those days when I have a lot to do and the ocean is just way too rough for me to get across. You know, sometimes in the month of May, I'll go every day and I'll look at the water and I'll look across at the grass growing and realize that it's growing way faster than I can keep up with it, and that my job is just getting bigger and bigger and bigger, when all I want to do is be on the other side mowing the lawn, and I'm on this side waiting for things to calm down.
Yeah, it's not a long way across that channel from the mainland to the island, but as you said, it's often rough. Have you ever made the trip and run into a surprise going across there?
Yeah, that's happened a couple of times. You know, one time I made it across and I broke an oar, and thankfully it was in summer, so I swam back. It was not a rough day. A couple times I've gotten dunked. The thing about it is, whenever it's rough, people always gather to watch you cross. And you can tell just by looking at them that they're not really rooting for you. And so a couple of times that I've definitely put on a show where I end up in the water for people. But, you know, for the most part, I make it across, and I try to be somewhat cautious, especially when the water's cold.
You do some amazing photography,
Thanks.
Which people can see in your Facebook page under the name Nubble Art. Maybe you can say something about what some of your favorite photographic moments you've been able to capture. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm particularly enamored by all the waves. You know, I mean, they're so varied, and every one of them is different, and the different angles that you can take the lighthouse from. So I like waves and I like clouds. So those perfect days when you want to be in the park, where there's not a cloud in the sky and the ocean is totally calm, those are not the days that I usually like to photograph. But, you know, anytime that you can really get some action in a scene or a lot of depth, that's what I like. And the other thing I like, too, about those kinds of days, you know, like foggy days, cloudy days, rough days, is I feel like that really captures what the lighthouse was made for. It wasn't made for sunny, calm days. It was made for those times when you couldn't see very well and you needed to be warned about the hazards that are just laying beneath the surf. And so for me, I feel like that captures the spirit of what the Nubble Lighthouse is.
Mm-hmm. How about wildlife? You've captured seals, birds, different kinds of wildlife as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the interesting things is that most of the time the animals have the island to themselves, and they get accustomed to that. So we have a lot of nesting seagulls, both the regular Atlantic gulls and eastern blackback gulls that nest on the island, which at first they tolerate you, and then they get their eggs under them, and suddenly they don't want you around anymore. We've had a snowy owl that's been hanging out on the island for the last couple of weeks, and he's kind of aloof, but they're also beautiful, and we see whales from time to time. We've had several of those over the last years. And then in the springtime, we get quite a lot of harbor seal pups. The island is really, it's a point, it's at the end of a point, and it's the only backwater out that way. And so it becomes like a refuge for them. And it's really kind of exciting to see them. We love seeing them when they're healthy, less so when they're not. But it's the wildlife story at the Nubble, above and below the water, is amazing as the history.
Yeah. Now, I know you've had a chance to meet some of the keepers of the past and family members of keepers. That has to be a thrill and a fun part of the job as well.
Yeah, absolutely. The fun thing about meeting people who have lived there is that they can tell the story of the most active part of the lighthouse's history, and hearing it from first person is pretty exciting, and realizing that how much it's changed over time as well, pretty great. It just gives personality to the lighthouse. I can remember that when I brought the last keeper over for a visit, he walked in the workshop, and when I got there, the workshop, it just was kind of in disarray, and one of the first things I did was put it to order. And he walked in and he's like, wow, it's just like I left it the day I walked out of here, which kind of blew my mind because nothing that I had put there had been in that place when I got there. So it kind of gives me a chill when I think about it,
Nubble Light has to be one of the most popular lighthouses in the world. It's one of the icons of the Maine coast. What makes it so special, do you think?
I've given this a lot of thought. Because, there's such an emotional component. It goes way beyond, like, a reasonable attachment sometimes. People just have such strong affection for this place. And I think it has to do with the fact that they can't go there. It's like, it's that magical thing. You can see it and you can experience it, but you can't walk up and touch the building. I feel like if it was sitting on land, it would be like a lot of other places that people would visit one time, and then they would have seen it and they would have experienced it, and then they'd be done with it and they move on to something else. But the Nubble, that unreachable quality of it, I think really has a lot of appeal to people. And it's always unspoiled. There's never anybody in the front yard unless it's me. It's just kind of like trapped in a little bubble of past history.
I think you're right. I think that is a big part of its appeal. You can't quite get there, but it is a magical place for sure. Well, Matt Rosenberg, thank you so much for being with me today, the caretaker and modern-day keeper of Nubble Light. I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jeremy. It was fun.
As Matt said, Nubble Light is a very special place to many people. I remember the local historian and author Bill Thompson was asked years ago if the Nubble is haunted. His answer was that there is a beautiful, peaceful spirit at the Nubble that makes everyone feel good. I agree with Bill about that very much. You can follow Matt Rosenberg on social media. He has a Facebook page called Nubble Art that features his excellent photography. He also has his personal Facebook page that includes a lot of information and photos of the Nubble, and he's on Instagram at Nubble Light Keeper. That's one word, Nubble Light Keeper, with a lot of great photography as well. There's also a Facebook page for Nubble Light. Just go to facebook.com/CapeNetic. That's it for this edition of Lighthearted Light. We'll be back with a regular episode this Sunday. For now, thanks so much for listening, and keep a good light.